It's still unbelievable.
Baruch Hashem.
Lots of Yiddish nachas. Listen, the house that's
Amen.
quite of Torah is a house that succeeds.
Oh,
Okay.
amen.
Your children, lo yimushu mipicha, mipi zaracha, or mipi zer zaracha, me'atav adoilim. Should always have, all your family should be b'nei Torah. Okay, excellent. Let's get started. So wires over here. Dine mominus. Dine mominus is b'shloisha. Dine mominus needs a bezdin of 3 people. Gzelos v'chavolos. Gzelos v'chavolos are also b'shloisha. The Gemara is going to delve into why is it that we're separating Dine Mominus from Gzelos and Chavolos, because Gzelos and Chavolos are also Dine Mominus. We learned yesterday that Rashi points out something interesting. If I would ask you, if you would ask me, what is the classic case of Gzela? I would say, if I go into your house and steal something, that's what I would say is Gzela. But the Rashbam, now we're with Rashi again. But Rashi says the classic case of Gzela is Koifer Bipikali. Now it is a type of Gzela, but you wouldn't think that's the textbook case of Gzela. And then Rashi says something else that was difficult. The Misha Sholach Boyad Havagazlim. Well, that's a completely different thing from Koifer Bipikadin. Koifer Bipikadin is saying you never got this Bipikadin. Shlichas Yad Bipikadin is using it. So there's 2 different things happening here. It's interesting why Rashi combined them. And then Rashi says what a typical case of Gzela is, v'chein, as an aside almost as an add-on, v'chein ha'choytif miyat chaveroi havagazlin kegoin v'yigzol as a chanis miyara mitri, which is the pasuk that's used to describe the standard case of Gzela, where someone is taking an actual object away from another person. Of a love of a loishilim, but if someone borrows money and doesn't repay, loy mikri gazlin. That's not called a gazlin. That doesn't mean it's the right thing, but it's just not the crime involved is not gzela. The milva on it at the time of the loan, there was no gzela done when the loiver received the money, and that money is his now. It's not the malva's money anymore. He's only owing him to repay, but not with the same money that he received. So therefore, he never stole money that was not his. The money that he got, he was able to take fair and square, and he didn't steal any money. He has a chiyuv to pay back. That's enough if you don't pay back. Thank you so much. Beauty, you don't want to miss this. You're going to miss this. I should make on the next Masechta. Okay, sagt Gemara weiter. Nezek v'chati nezek. So nezek we learned is if someone stoises somebody else's shor, and it's a shor amud, so the owner of the shor amud has to pay the full damages. That's called nezek. Chati nezek is if his shor if the shor mazik was a shor tam, then the owner only has to pay half the nezek. Tashlume kefel, which is the double payment that a ganav has to pay back if he's caught red-handed. Now notice these are the chati nezek and tashlume kefel are not mum, they're knas, right? Tashlume above chamisha, which is also a knas, which is what a perpetrator pays if he steals a shor or a seh, and he shechts it or he sells it. Okay? Bishloisha. All of these type of dinei Torah require a bezin of 3. Ha'oinis ha'mafata, v'hamochi shemra. Again, these are 3 knoses. Oinis ha'mafata, the knas is 50 shkolim. Mochi shemra is when someone marries a woman and claims that she was mizana when she was an arusa, and if it's not true, he has to pay 200 shkolim to her father. Bishloisha, again, you need a bezin of 3 to adjudicate such a discussion. Divrei Meir, but the Chachamim Oimrim, Mochi Shemra is different than Oinis Mafata. The Mochi Shemra alone require a bezin of Eshem Shloisha, and the reason for it is B'pnei Sheyesh Boy Dinin Nefashos. If in fact during the discussion it turns out that the husband's accusation is correct, and she was Mizana when she was an Arusa, so now this morphs into a din Torah of Dinin Nefashos. So the Chachamim hold that I guess you have to start off with a bezdin that's equipped to handle any direction that this case might go into. While Meir holds, no, we only need a bezdin that's equipped to handle the immediate shaila. Should another shaila come up, should this morph into a shaila of din nefashis, so we can always transfer you to a different bezdin. Makis b'shloisha. Someone who's over alav gets malchus. That would require a bezdin of 3. Mishum b'shmol amru be'esrim u'shloisha. Malchus needs 23 dayonim. Ibur achoidish, which we're not quite sure what that is, we'll have to wait for the Gemara to explain. The shloisha, that requires 3 edim. Ibur hashana is when they add an extra month, because we find that we're in the middle of February and Pesach is arriving. We have to add a month because we want Pesach to align with the spring. So Ibur hashana b'shloisha, you need 3 dayanim to pass the shaila. Divrei Reb Meir, that's what Reb Meir holds. Which Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Aimer, b'shloisha maskilim. 3 people can start the conversation, but during the debate, uvechamisha noisin v'noisin, you need 5 dayanim for the debate. And when they finally come to a decision and they're taking their vote, they're taking roll call, the goyim b'shiva, for that you would need 7 dayanim. However, if him gomer begimel muveris, but if the 3 people who started the discussion concluded, it would still be valid. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter, smichas kein, which Rashi describes as if they have to bring a par helam davar shel tzibur, who does smicha on the par? The best v'arifa se'egla. I'm not sure. Let me look inside the Rashi and see if that's referring to the doing of it or the pasking to do it. I'm assuming it means they're the ones who go down to the nachal with it, but there's not. We only have smichas kenim. We don't have a Rashi and Egla Rufa, but I assume the ones who go do it.
Doesn't mean putting your actual hands on it?
I think so.
How do you get 5 people to, or what is it, 5?
Well, an ox is a pretty big animal.
Yeah, but you have to put it on your head and you have to put all your weight on. It's pretty awkward.
I mean, for the smichas kenim, does it all have to be done together, or could they do it one at a time?
I don't know.
It's good that Kachim is coming right after the Zikr, so we'll have the answer soon. So we have to mark down that we need to remember when multiple people are doing smicha, can they do them one at a time, or are they all doing it together? That needs 3. Divrei Reb Shimon, Reb Yehuda Aimer b'chamisha, hachalitza b'hamiyunim. So we know what chalitza is, Rachman l'tzlan, if someone dies without children, to be mater his wife, the brother-in-law to do chalitza. Miyunin is really only midrabanan, as Rashi explains, because a ketana who doesn't have a father cannot be married to deraisa. If her mother or brothers marry her off, she could refuse the marriage anytime she wants, up until she becomes a gedolah, and that also has to be officiated by a rabbi. So b'shloisha you need 3. Neta revai, if someone has neta revai that he wants to redeem, and the market price for it is not obvious. For instance, it's not a standard fruit. Maybe it's spoiled a little bit, and therefore you can't use the standard posted market rates. Same with Ma'aser Sheni. She'ein dam of Yeduim. Ein dam of Yeduim is because they're not perfect fruit. They're somewhat spoiled, and therefore there's no established market price for it. You need an assessment. You need to have 3 people. B'shloisha. Hakdeshes, if someone is makdish something, lebedek habayis, and you want to be paid it, again, you need 3 dayanim. Erichin hamataltlin. That means if you did erichin, the Gemara is going to explain on something that's not a prescribed amount. B'shloisha, that would also require 3 dayanim to make the assessment. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, echad mehen kohen. One of the 3 has to be a kohen, and Rashi says we learn it out of a pasuk. T'chsiv kohen b'parsha ke'erkecha kohen. So that's how we know there has to be a kohen on the bezdin. Okay, v'hakar koyis tisha v'chayin. So to assess the value of karka, you need 10 people, and one of the 10 needs to be a kohen. The adam kayotzeben, and if they have to assess the value of a person because someone donated that to Hekdesh, it would be just like karka, where you would need 9 to 10 people, and one of them had to be a kohen. Let's see, Rashi Vakakoyis, Shal Hektish, Tzarech Tes, needs 9 regular people. The Ha'asiri Koyin, and the 10th one should be a Koyin, Lashumon, to assess their value in Bal of Dyson if you want to redeem them. The Gemara Mefarish, V'yalach Lu Mikroy, all of these statements in the Mishnah will be supported by Psukim. If someone finds that he was makdish his own value and he wanted to be paid himself, you need 10 people to determine his value. The Gemara Parach, the Gemara is going to ask, how could you be makdish yourself? So how would this ever be relevant where someone is being paid to a person? Dinei nefashos is be'eshem u'shloisha. You need 23 dayanim to pass on dinei nefashos, and as Rashi tells us, the Mishnah itself is going to show us why. Hareveya v'arnirva. Ravein is a nirva's Raiva shar sharava isha. So a male shar that was mizana with a woman, ubehema shenirva, or a female animal shenirva leish that a man violated. Both of them nidonis habehema l'saka. In both these cases, the behema gets killed. In order to paskin whether or not the behema should get killed, the esher mishloisha. You need 23 dayonim to paskin on a life and death decision of a behema. Shenemar, how do we know this? Because it says the oraktos a isha by the case of roiva v'yes a behema. When it talks about the nirva, when a man was mezana with a behema, v'yemer v'es a behema tayrogu. And we learn from there that we're comparing the hariga of the person to the hariga of the animal. Just like the hariga of the person requires a besan of 23, which we will soon see, so too, killing a behema needs the same besan as Rashi does b'chav gimel. To adam hareveya, the iskish la'adod, the Torah compares them to one another. The arakas the isha, the esa behema, behema is the partner to the isha that was mezana. The ishkish behema leisha, ma isha b'chav gimel, am behema b'chav gimel. Peter would love this because they see that we treat the animals just like they treat the behemoths. Zok to Gemara, shara niskal be'esher mushloisha. To paskan and a shara niskal, why would a shor be shtois? It's not only for Rav and Nirva, it's also shenogach odam umeis. If a shor kills somebody, the shor gets killed. Again, we need 23. Dayonim shenemar hashor yisokel v'gam balav yumos, and it's the same package as before. Kemisas bailim kach misas hashor. Now, of course, bailim don't get killed if their shor kills somebody. So here, Kamisas bailim, Rashi points out this, Kamisas bailim, just like in a case where the bailim would be chayv misa. For instance, they were mechal Shabbos. It would require a besan of 23. So too, when you kill a shor, because a shor killed somebody else, it requires a besan of 23. Hazaev v'ha'ari v'adoi v'anomer v'arbardlis v'anochosh. All of these animals, if they kill, then they get killed, just like a shor in the skull. And therefore, we saw some be'eshem v'shloisha. But Rabbi Eliezer says, you do a preemptive strike on these animals. A shor, you let it live until it kills somebody. But any one of these animals, which are by nature menaces to society, if you see one of these animals roaming around, you could feel free to kill it, and because they're menaces to society. Kasha on this is, why doesn't it include raccoons and foxes and skunks? I'm not sure, and coyotes. Why aren't they on our list? Rabbi Kiva Aimer, someone, if in the odd chance that someone might watch this video in 5 years and they live in the Chveis in Luxembourg, they're not going to know what we're talking about because they don't have why we're mentioning these animals. Okay, you'll have to figure it out. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Misasam be'esher mishloisha. You need a besan of 20. Zok the Gemara weiter, zok the Mishnah weiter. Ein donin lois hashevet. If an entire shevet was over avodah zarah b'mezid, that will require a besan of shivim ve'echad, as we'll soon see. Ein donin lois hashevet.
What did Rabbi Akiva add? Rabbi Akiva didn't add anything.
I'm not sure what Tanakama. You're right. I don't know what Rabbi Akiva is adding to the Tanakama. I'm assuming the Gemara is going to have to raise that. And we all know when Rabbi Akiva speaks, he's definitely adding something.
That's the only way to cut my attention. Right?
Yeah. V'lo yisnavi hasheker, a Novi Sheker that gets killed also needs 71. The Veloyas Kohen Gadol. If a Kohen Gadol needs to be killed, he was Bechal Shabbos or something, Rachman al-Son, it would also need a bezin of 71. Ella al pi bezin shall shivim vechad. The ein maitzin lemilchamas harishus, ella al pi bezin shall shivim vechad. In order to go to war, you have to ask the Supreme Court. The government, the king, cannot decide to go to war without authorization from the Supreme Court. But Rashi describes exactly what a milchamas harishus is. The milchamas harishus, kol milchama kari rishus. Anytime a king goes to milchama that requires approval from a bezin of 71 from the Sanhedrin, levad mimilchemes Yoshua shahoisa lichvoish Eretz Yisrael. The only milchama that's a milchemes mitzvah is not occurring anymore. That happened already when Yeshua conquered Eretz Yisrael. But every other milchama that a king will fight is considered a milchemes rishus, and it requires approval by the Sanhedrin.
Just is I don't know if Dave is listening, but is going to the Kohen Gadol Urim V'Tumim higher than Sanhedrin? If you can circumvent Sanhedrin, go directly to Urim V'Tumim.
I don't think so. I think if you need a bezin, you need a bezin.
And Bezdin has the final say.
Well,
right?
sometimes we had a Navi, right, where Shaul Melech went to the Kohen Gadol to ask should he fight the war. So you want to know, did he go to the Kohen Gadol and look and petition the Urim V'Tumim before he met with Bezin or after?
Right. Is it you're going to the Kohen Gadol to validate your own narrative, right?
I'm not sure. That would be interesting to know. If you sure have to go, you couldn't not. I don't think you can use the Urim V'Tumim to circumvent Bezin if we have a pasuk that says that's necessary. The question is, what did he do first?
Right. And the Kohen Gadol is not on the Sanhedrin, right? He's never on the Sanhedrin because they're the ones. If the Kohen Gadol does something inappropriate, I think the Sanhedrin is the one who's supposed to.
Well, what if a member of the Sanhedrin does something inappropriate? They probably have to have. They probably have a jury pool.
Yeah. No, do we cover it later?
I said. Well, I mean, we'll see the Gemara. But I saw over an interesting story is that when they were establishing the state of Israel, so who were the rabbanim of the Haredi community at that time? Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Shula Diskin, we call them I wouldn't say the Talmud, but like the Orthodox. So they were discussing when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, we're going to have a bezin. So who's going to be the bezin? Like, what are we going to do with? How are we going to split up the different responsibilities to make sure that the Haredim have control over the Piskei Halacha? So they're smoothing. So what are we going to do with Rav Kook? He's a Chatziyoni. He says, Rav Kook, no problem. We'll make him the Kohen Gadol.
Very
give
good.
Him an honorary title. We'll make him the Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol could be part of the Sanhedrin.
And there's a case in Navi where some of the Shvatim came to David HaMelech and told him we don't have enough parnasa. So his answer was go capture some more territory and that'll be your parnasa.
That was the first case of guns and butter, right, Dave?
Yeah. Economics 101, yeah.
So
Anyway,
there's a whole discussion if that meant capturing more from the Goyim, or if that means spreading in Binyamin, spreading into Yehuda. But if it was going from the Goyim, I'm sure they still have to be shoyal by Besdin.
Okay.
So I guess first it gets approved by the political echelon, and then it has to be finally approved by the Besdin.
Yeah, but there'll be a case of Geneva or Gazela, or you can't just willy-nilly capture people because you don't have Parnasa go capture territory.
So if I'm not mistaken, when the Yidden came in under Yeshua, they didn't follow what the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted them to do, and that is clear out all of the Pelishtim, all of the locals, and they left pockets of local Avodah Zarah wrongfully because they couldn't be bothered.
So if that's the case. But this is not the Plishtim. This is, I seem to recall, northern Eretz
But they still had I think it was all property that they were supposed to have captured that they didn't. And that ended up bringing Klal Yisrael down.
Okay, that would.
I think it was indigenous people. I think it was like Yukon and Northwest Territory.
Well, we're occupiers. That's how it works. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Zok to Gemara. The Einosin Sanadrois L'Shvatim. No, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. We had Vein Matil Mechamas Rishus Elal Pibezin Shal Shivim Bech. That's where we're up to. Ein Moisifin Ala Ir. Oh, look at that. This segues right into what David brought up. What if you want to expand the boundaries of your municipality or Azaris? If you want to expand the boundaries of the actual Azara, Ela Al Pibezin Shal Shivim Bech. That would also require a bezin of Shivim Bech. Ve'noizin Sanadrois L'Shvatim Ela Al Pi Bezin Shal Shivim Bech. In every shevet, they had to have batei of 23. They had to have in every big area. They had to have it to deal with the shilas of that locality. Who establishes the bezin of 23? The Sanhedrin of Shivim Ve'echad. They're the ones who established the bezin of 23. You cannot condemn a city to death. That also needs 21. If there's a city that's right on the border between the Jewish area and the Goyish area, we will never make that city into an Ir Hanidachas, which the Gemara will explain why. And you're never allowed to make 3 cities together into an Ir Hanidachas. The most amount of cities that you could condemn to Ir Hanidachas is 2 cities. Sanhedrin Gedola, Hoisa Shal Shivim Bi'echad. The main Sanhedrin in the Lishkas Hagazis was made up of 71 dayanim. Ukatana Shal Esher Mishloisha. And the smaller Sanhedrins was the Bezin of 23. So, Frag the Mishnah, where did we get these numbers from? Minayin L'Gdoila Shehi Shal Shivim Bi'echad. How do we know that the Sanhedrin Agdoila has to be 71 dayanim? Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, Hashem told Moshe, "Esveli shivimish mizikna Yisrael." Hashem told Moshe, "Gather 70 Zakanim from Klal Yisrael," and Moshe al Gabeim, and Moshe was the Rosh Bezdin. So you see, the first Sanhedrin that Hakadosh Baruch Hu established was 71. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shivim, it was only 70. The Torah says Shivimish. The Torah doesn't say you're including Moshe on top of the 70, so it's only an even number of 70. Uminayin L'Ktana. And how do we know that the small batei dinim that were able to paskin in regional courts, even dinei chiv misa, din nefashos, shenemar, it says v'shaftu ha'eda v'tzilo ha'eda. Whenever they're paskening on nefashos, an eda has to condemn and an eda has to save. Eda shayfetes ve'eda matzelas. So now, how much is an eda? Harei kanesrim. Because an Eda is 10, so you need 10 people who could claim that this person should be cleared, and you need 10 people who will condemn him. And that's a total of 2. How do you know Eda means 10 people? Minayin la'Eda Shiyasara, the very famous Mishnah, Shenemar ad Mosai la'Eda hara azois, when the Meraglim came, the Baruch said, ad Mosai la'Eda hara azois, this is an Eda of bad people. Now, who were the bad Meraglim? There were 12 Meraglim, but 2 were good. So the Eda Ra comprised of 10 bad people. Yatu Yeshuva Kolev. So 12 minus 2 is 10. That's where we know that Eda means 10. It's funny why the source of the word Eda's meaning should come from such a horrible story. Uminayin Lahavi Oid Shleisha. So we're saying you need a bezin of 23. But if you only need a Veshavtu Eda, a V'tzilo Eda, that's a total of 20 people. Where do the extra 3 people come from? Zok Gemara, Mimash Mishanemar, it says in the pasuk, Loisia Acharei Rabim Lerois. It says that you should not follow the Rabbim to do bad. So it says Acharei Rabim Lahatois, you go Basra. So if you have an uneven amount of people in the Bezdin, if Roiv people, even if there's a Roiv by merely one person, the suspect will be exonerated. But even if you have a roiv of one person condemning, don't condemn him to death, because only one more person says he's guilty than says that he's innocent. So Shemei she'eya imayim l'toiva. They have to have more overruling the toiv than just one extra. So in Cain, lama nemar acharei rabam lahatos. So we learn from here, loik hatiyoscha l'toiva hatiyoscha l'ra. It takes a lot more to be mata somebody l'ra than it takes to be mata him l'toiv. Hatiyoscha l'toiv al pi'echad. If there's even only one person more claiming that this person should be exonerated, we exonerate him. But hatiyoscha l'ra al pishnayim. You need to have two more people saying that he's innocent. I'm sorry, you need two more people saying that he's guilty than the amount of people who says that he's innocent in order to pass him l'ra. Because you also need a full Ada on either side. So we'll see. So let's finish the clause in the Mishnah, and we'll go back to Rashi, and Rashi brings that beautifully. The Ein Bezin Shakel, you can't just have 22 people, because then you have a Bezin that can go 11 and 11. You always have to have an odd number. You need to add one more, Hareikan Esher Shloisha, and then there's going to be 23. So the Rashbam explains why you can't include the two tens in the roives. So Zokter Rashbam, I'm sorry, Zokter Rashi. I keep on mixing up the Rashbam. You see, Mr. Rashbam, but now we have Zayda. Shemei Ani de la Toiva Liskos Halach Acharei. You see that only to help the suspect, you follow the roiv. Shafilu miyot hamazakim v'rabim hamachayvin ksiv lo yisiach rabim l'rois. You see, even if there are more machayvim, there's a roiv of roh, you still don't follow them. Imkein lama nemer achay rabim l'hatis mishum schus lo yitzrich lei, because we already know that. El afilu l'chayev halach acharein. You learn that even to be mechayev somebody, you follow the roiv, but it's a different type of roiv than the roiv needed to exonerate somebody. Lo chati yoscha acharei rabim l'schus. And the Armelach Linta is Acharabim L'chayv. It's not the same Acharei Rabbim that will exonerate somebody as the Rabbim required to condemn him. Ela L'schos al pi'echad. Even one majority is enough. Afilu ein yisein mezaken al machayvin elo echad zoche would be enough. Aval l'chayva, if you want to condemn somebody, achu machayvin oitvin al mezaken shnai. You need to have at least two more dayonim that are being mechayivim than those that are being mezakim. V'hachi kamar, and this is going to explain what Duvi asked. V'hachi kamar, lo yisiya acharei rabim l'rois al pi'echad. Because of one majority, you should not condemn this person who's on trial. Avar acharei rabim b'shnayim, then afilu l'rois. Then you'll follow the condemnation if there's two people more condemning. Hilchach al korchach of beis ba'ina. Because of that, you need 22. The botzer meyasor mezakin lekalameimar. There had to be at least 10 being mezakin. The oksiva siloedo. So you have to have at least 10 people on the opposing side. So if there's 10 people there, then there's got to be at least 12 people on the other side. But 10 and 12 is 22. So that's where you would need 23. The suloi mishkachas choiva botzer meyud beis. If the hatzilu idea is 10, then you need a minimum of 12 to condemn. That's 22. And then the Mishnah says, and you cannot have a Bezdin Shakel, and therefore you have to go to 23. Now, we had earlier in the Mishnah, there are people who hold that a Bezdin of 70 is good. So we're going to see that not everybody holds that you cannot have a Bezdin Shakel. There's a discussion about that as well. Okay, Zok Gemara weiter. The Kama, if we learned Rashi Tila, let's do the next Rashi as well. The Ein Bezdin Shakel, Ein Oishin Bezdin Zugos. You never make it that Bezdin should be able to split into couples of two. Because if it splits 50-50, and there you won't be able to have a one majority if it's exactly even. We always need to have a tiebreaker. So then because it'll never be exactly two more. Because if it'll be 12 and 11, so
out of the three, you'll take two are yes and one is no, but in total, you still only got one.
You'll still only have one more. So let's see what the Gemara Parach, given the Ein Bez and Shakel, Mitzrach Esem Shloishim, Hata L'Ra Al Pishnayim Mishkachas. So I think could be that's what Rashi is referring to. That the Gemara is going to ask. But you can have the people who are saying Zakai 10, and then you can have 13 people, but that's not two extra. It's either one or three. How do you have two? unless you have a Bezdin Shakel. Good point. So it seems like that's what Rashi is pointing out, which is your kasha. Because it's either 1 or 3. How do you have 2 unless it's a Bezdin Shakel? Very good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that, but that's what Rashi's saying, and that's what you're asking as well. I only understood Rashi because you asked the question a second before I learned Rashi. So you're better than Article. Article I only look up after I read the Gemara. You actually feed it to me before I read the Rashi. So it's even schmacker. Talk to Gemara weiter.
So we're going to have to assume that you can't abstain. If you're on Sanhedrin or a Basin, you can't say, I can't decide, I'm not sure.
Only from Canada.
That's right. You cannot abstain. If on Bezdin, we're paying you for an opinion. We're not paying you to abstain. Anyway, with Jewish people, it's not a problem. When was the last time you saw a Jew abstain from giving his opinion?
Just as a curiosity, were the votes open or were they
What do you mean? Because they all voted. Of course, they voted open. Because the Gemara tells us in Gittin that one of the reasons why the Beis Hamikdash was Chorev is because the Gadol Shebebezin voted first, and after that, nobody wanted to contradict him.
Right.
So I think they go Mikotan ala Gadol. Everyone says their opinion. Then they have a debate. Because I believe that in order to kill somebody, it ends up having to be unanimous. So the Dayanim who are Mechayiv have to be able to convince the other Dayanim to go along with them. I mean, we'll see in Sanhedrin, this is what we're learning, how it's done. How many people does a city need to have in order to have a Sanhedrin? Now, we're not talking about the Sanhedrin of 71. We're talking about a 23. How big does a city have to be? How big does the pool have to be in order to build a bezin of 23? So Zok Gemara may have asked him. The city has to have at least 120 people to be able to take out from there a bezin of 23. You need 230. Keneged sorry asaris. So why 120? The Rashi tells us we will soon see in the Gemara. Why 230? Zok Rashbam Tahanyu Chav Gimel Asiriyash. We want every bezdin, every dayan on the bezdin to be a sorry asara, meaning to be able to represent 10 people. So in order to have 23 people, each one representing 10 people, the pool has to be 230. Zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Otu gezelois v'chavolois lav dine momenis ninu. How does the Mishnah start? It says dine momenis b'shloisha, gezelos v'chavolos b'shloisha. Aren't gezelos and chavolos a part of dine momenis? So why is the Mishnah separating them out into 2 different halachas? And really, the shaila is even more than just separating them out. It could have said dine momenis ugzelos v'chavolos b'shloisha, and the Gemara would have the same kasha. Why are you itemizing gezelos v'chavolos? But the kasha is even more chomer because it says b'shloisha 2 times, which the Gemara is going to refer to. It says dine momenis b'shloisha, gezelos v'chavolos b'shloisha. So there's an extra repetition of the shloisha as well, which I think you asked right away. Okay, Zok to Heilige Gemara. That's question number 1. Zok to Gemara, Amar Abavo, Mahen Katani. Really, all the Gemara is saying when it goes to Gzelos v'Chavolos is it's just elaborating on the first comment that the Tana made. Dina Mamnis or B'Shloisha. Mahen Dina Mamnis. What represents Dina Mamnis? Gzelos v'Chavolos. So it's very simple. Freit the Gemara, but that's not the only examples of Dina Mamnis. There's other types of Dina Mamnis. Avaloi dois v'Avolos loy. Haydois alvois Zok to Rashbam are loans. So I keep on saying the Rashbam, I apologize, it's Rashi. So let's quickly run through Rashi. Mahen Katani. High Gzelos v'Chavolos is merely a Perusha de Dine Mominisu. The Laitema called Dine Mominis b'mashma. The Tana is not referring to all Dine Mominis in this Mishnah. The Tana is only referring to a certain class of Dine Mominis that are Gzelos v'Chavolos. What class of Dine Mominis is the Tana not referring to? Ulumute halvois v'hoidois shehin boyin al gemilas chasodim. Meaning, if I lent you money and you're moed b'mitzvah, if I lent you money and you're kofer hakoil, that's the discussion. Those types of Dinei Torah start off because of gemilas chasodim, because somebody was kind enough to lend money. And because of that, we're trying to strip away bureaucracy and red tape from allowing a malva to collect. We want to make it easier for a malva to collect from a loiva, not have to go through the same bureaucratic mess as it would take to do other types of Dinei Torah, and therefore they're not in the list. Now, we know they do need a bezin of 3, so we're going to have to determine exactly in what way are we making it easier for a malva to collect from a loiva. That'll come out later. But at least we're saying they're different than the regular dinim omnis. Exactly what process is the malva exempt from to simplify his claims process. They're both because of a milva. He has edim that the loiva was moida, that he owed the money. And alvois is baladan beide alva shemedim b'fnein alveil. So either I have edim that the loiva was moida that he owes me the money, or I have edim that witnessed the loan. So that's what we're referring to. Amar bavo mahin katani mind in the momnis gzelas v'chavolis. Aval haydois v'alvois loy utricha. We need actually both cases. The Tana dinim momnis, if the Mishnah only said dinim momnis and didn't explain that we're referring b'dafka to gzelas v'chavolis, havamina that afilu haydois v'alvois. I would have thought that the Tana is also including in dinim momnis haydois v'alvois. Therefore, Tana Gzelis v'Chavolis, the Tana wanted to say, I'm not referring to all dinim omnis. I'm referring to a specific class of dinim omnis. Gzelis v'Chavolis, but not Haidois v'Alvois. The Tana Gzelis v'Chavolis, v'lekatoni dinim omnis, so why didn't the Tana just say, Gzelis v'Chavolis, b'shloisha, what, just skip out dinim omnis b'shloisha. The Tana couldn't have done that either. Because Havamina, Huadin, Ta'afilu Haidois v'Alvois. I would have thought that those were just two examples of dinim omnis, but really the Tana means to include all dinim omnis. Why did the Tana pick punkt as an example? Is mishum the ikar gimel the chsivi b'gzelis v'chavolos chsivi, or the ikar gimel the chsivi kama b'gzelis v'chavolos chsivi. The main makar of how we know that you require 3 dayanim to adjudicate dinim omnis is from the psukim that talks about gzelos v'chavolos. So if it would have only said gzelos v'chavolos, I would have thought, in fact, that you don't need 3 dayanim to paskin on alvois. But we know you do need 3 dayanim to paskin on alvois. There's another distinction that we didn't discuss yet. So therefore, since the ikar gimel d'ksivi b'gzelos v'chavolos ksivi, how do you know that? Gzelos t'chsiv and nikra balabais el ho Elohim, and that means a bezin, and it says it 3 times. That's how we know you need 3 dayanim. Chavolos, and chavolos, we know mali chavel b'gufay, mali chavel b'maynai. Chavolos, it also says it there, and it's the same thing. Chavel b'gufay, chavel b'maynai. It's the same thing. Dinim omnis. Therefore, Tana ma hein dinim omnis gzelos v'chavolos. The Tana especially said dinim omnis. What type of dinim omnis am I referring to? Gzelos v'chavolos, to tell us avloidois v'alvois loy. I don't mean to include haidois v'alvois. So therefore, the Tana had to both say dinim omnis and then clarify what class of dinim omnis is referring to make sure that we all know that even haidos v'alvois requires 3, but there's another distinction that we have not yet discussed between haidos v'alvois and gzelos v'chavolos. Ulamai. So now the Gemara wants to, what is that distinction? We're talking about this mystery distinction. What is the difference between a bezdin for haidos v'alvois versus a bezdin for chavolos? If you're going to claim that for haidos v'alvois you don't need 3 dayanim, well, Amar Rabavo, Shnayim Shadanu, Dine Mominis, Ledivre Akoil, Ein Dinehem Din. So you can't say that you can get away with a bezdin of less than 3 in order to do haidos v'alvois. Ella, you know what the distinction is? The loy ba'inan mumchin. There's types of dinim mominis like haidos v'alvois that you don't need dayanim mumchin. But for gzelos and chavolos, you need dayanim mumchin. So that makes it easier for the malva, because instead of having to find 3 mumchin, he can get away with non-mumchin. Why not? Have one. Nowadays people go to Rabbanim and ask them shaylos. You never saw 2 people go to a Rav and ask them a shaylo? So it's not an official person, but the people go. So we would have thought that one dying could pass them. So Zok the Gemara, my kasav. What exactly does he hold to say that you don't need mumchin? Ikasavar, Ira Parashis Kasav Khan. Now, the makar of the halacha that you need 3 dayanim is from the 3 times it says v'nikra balabais Elohim in the parsha of gzelos v'chavolos. But we learned, I believe in Bava Metzia, that if you analyze those psukim, they're talking about gzelos v'chavolos. They're talking about the kfir of a shomer, and that's probably why now we have a little bit of a burst of memory. That's probably why when Rashi introduced Gzelis v'Chavalois, he introduced it as a shomer denying that he received something, because that is the parsha that the Torah is talking about when the Torah talks about going to Bezdin. The flagship, the textbook case that the Torah uses to tell us that you need 3 dayanim is actually speaking about shomer. And in the parsha of shomer, it says ki huzeh. Ki huzeh is referring to moed b'mitzvahs. Moed b'mitzvahs has nothing to do with shomer. A shomer who denies that he got something has to swear because he was a shomer. Moed b'mitzvahs is someone who borrowed money from somebody else. He only has to swear if he was moed b'mitzvahs. Yet in the parsha of shomer, the Torah throws in the comment of ki huzeh. So the question is, what is it? Do we say it's Erev Parsha is Kosav Khan, meaning when the Torah uses the word ki huzeh in the Parsha of Shomer, it actually doesn't belong here. It actually is referring to a completely different case that's not Shmira. It's referring to a case of a Malva and a Loiva. If that's how you're learning, so that means the same V'nikra Balabais Elohim that's talking about the Parsha of Shemira, of Gzelis v'Chavalois, that's also including the parsha of Moed b'mitzvahs, because you're saying that the ki huzeh in that parsha is misplaced, and it's referring to Moed b'mitzvahs. So then by Moed b'mitzvahs, which is Alvois, which is Haidois v'Alvois, that's also in the parsha where it says that you need 3 dayanim. So ikos of a ear parsha is Kosav Kan, Liboy Nami Mumchen, because the same limud you have that applies to Chavalois and Gzelos applies equally to Moed b'mitzvahs. Because of our any year of parsha is Kosav Kan, and if you're telling me that when it says ki huzeh, it's in fact not referring to moed b'mitzvahs, it's referring only to shmira, and what it means is not relevant now. But then there's no mention of moed b'mitzvahs in the parsha from where we learn you need 3 dayanim. So then shlosh shalamali, how do you know that you even need 3 dayanim? Maybe 1 dayan should be enough. Zok Gemara lo'ilum kasav year of parsha is Kosav Kan. Really, the Gemara holds. The Tana holds Erev Parsha Kosav Kan, meaning that the Torah refers to Moed b'mitzvahs out of place, even in the discussion of Gzelos v'Chavalois. And therefore, you have the Torah telling us that by Moed b'mitzvahs, you also need a bezdin of 3. But I bezoy you should need mumchin as well. It should have exactly the same halacha as Gzelos v'Chavalois. Ubedinu the liboy nami mumchin. It should be exactly like Gzelos v'Chavalois, and you should need a bezdin of mumchin. But hi. The loibayin mumchin is only a gzeira d'Rabbanon mishum d'Rabbi Chanina. Amar Rabbi Chanina devar Torah echad dinei mamanis ve'echad dinei nefashos v'drishu v'chakira. Really, sa'ifar dinei mamanis and sa'ifar dinei nefashos, you need drishu v'chakira. You got to really put the edim through the ringer, as the Rashi says. So live like as edim beis a yoim beis a shayil veyu. You have to ask him detailed questions. That's me'ikar din. But we don't do that. We don't demand the Malva to know such detailed information. But Me'ikar Din, they should know it. Shenemar Mishpat Echad Yolachem, which is comparing Dini Nefashis to Dini Mamanis. The same way you need to scrutinize Edim who come on Dini Nefashis, you need to scrutinize Edim that come for Dini Mamanis. So Umatam Amru Dini Mamanis Loi Ba'in Drisha V'Chakira. So why did Chazal say that you don't have to rip apart the Edim as carefully when you're talking about a milva? If a malva knows that anytime he needs to go make a claim against a loiva, it's going to be a hassle, and they're going to heckle and harass his edim, he'll say, you know what, I'm not borrowing money, I'll never be able to retrieve it. So they made a special takana, go easy on edim that come to claim that a loiva owes money. Okay, so I'm sorry? So I guess they decided if a zoyvat, we'll make it easier for the edim, but we still need to have a best. Okay, so let's see what it's told us. People aren't going to want to lend money anymore. The edim might not remember what day it was. They might not remember if it was a sunny day, the day we lent the money. And therefore, the edis will not match perfectly the opposite. If we throw away edim and halva as easily as we throw away edim for dinyan nefashos, it's going to be pretty hard for a malva to prove his claim. We might not find mumchin. So what he's asking, maybe they should go lenient on 3 dayanim. I guess they decided that this is how they wanted to do it. So let's just quickly, we have 2 more minutes, so let's just learn quickly about this parsha, because it's actually chazering what we already learned in Bava Kama. It's a long Rashi, but it's a simple Rashi, so we'll quickly rush through it. Ikosavar Erev Parshas Kosav Kam. The Ikalaman Omar by Gozel Leitim. There's a man Omar in the Perka Gozel in Bava Kama. Shaparshis Aksuvais Be'ela Mishpatim Mur Vavashem. In Parshas Mishpatim, where it talks about Shmira, it's a mishachs. There's so many different things mixed in there. Sheesh Mikra Kosav of Parshazu Sheinu Yochel Amid Ba El Meparsha Cheres. There's one pasuk in that parsha that clearly sticks out, doesn't belong here. And what pasuk are we referring to? Kegoyin Asher Yomer Kiyuzeh, which is Moed B'Miktas. Yalfinim Minei Moed B'Miktas Atayna Yishava. Now that's not relevant to Asher Mechinim. It's Kiyuzeh is written in the parsha that talks about Asher Mechinim. Even though it says Kiyuzeh, when the Torah is discussing Asher Mechinim, it can't possibly be referring to Asher Mechinim. You know why? The Shaimim a Shamer is chayav to swear if he denies that he has it, even by a koy for a koil. The parshas the imkes of talvakoy. The words kiyuzad does not belong in the shpatim; it belongs in a different parsha that discusses havos. So it's out of place. It got lost and it ended up here in this parsha. The hostam hu to be in haydav mixas. The only time you need a moedah mixas to be mechayiv your shvua, that's only by a hava, not by a shmira. V'loi moedah klum. If a malva goes to a loiva and says, "Loiva, you owe me $100,000," and the loiva says, "La hadam, I don't owe you a penny." Chazaka im tainis hateveya emes. If the malva was right that the loiva actually borrowed $100,000 from him, loy hoyu yochel zel lahos pon of negloi v'loy miloy visad. If you borrowed $100,000 from somebody, you would never be able to have such chutzpah and flatly deny it. Therefore, we believe you when you flatly deny it, because there's no way you can flatly deny if someone did you such a big favor and lent you so much money. The fact that we say the psyche of a person is that he would never be able to completely deny alone that someone was so kind to him. Therefore, if he is denying it, he must be saying the truth. But if he's moed b'miktas there, he might not feel comfortable enough to deny the whole thing. So that's why it takes a moed b'miktas to be mechayiv a loiva shvu. Avol b'pikadon the lekah gemilach chasadim. When I'm a shamer for you, I owe you nothing. To the contrary, I did you the favor. I'm watching everything for you. So then may is pana. A person will definitely feel confident enough to directly contradict and lie that he never received anything. The koyver call. That's why he was shvua. That's why logically he needs a shvua, because it's easier for him to lie. The high Tana, the Masnitzin, our Tana of our Mishnah is svirle nami. The high ashayer mekiyuzeh is balvomishtoi. If our Sukkim of Shmira are also talking about Alva, well, then you have a pasuk saying you need 3 days on it. Hari Neymar, Alakim Baikral, the Mashma Mumchin, Lashon Sorora V'Rabbanos, Kidim Metagaminon, Reinis Saticha, Lakim Lapiroi, Elohim means your boss over Piroi, Lashon Rabbanos, V'Lavoy Mumchin. Vikas over the Hakra Lava Alva Mishtoi, and if you're going to say no, Kiyuz is not talking about Alva, it's not misplaced, and there's another pshat in how we understand that pasuk and what it's doing in the middle of the case of Sher Mechinam. Then shloishim in olam bava. How do you know? Did you ever need 3 dayanim bava? Hamitlasa Elohim nafkol kaman. We learn it from the 3 times it says Elohim in the parsha of Shmira, and the Elohim bava like Siv, and the parsha of Bava never mentions anything about that. So Gemara, our Mishnah holds with Daraisa you need 3 mumchin, but because of Reb Chanina's takana, not to discourage malvis from lending money, we lightened up the requirements that they should be mumchin, and we allow them to be non-mumchin, so it would be easier for a malva to assemble a bezdin to make a claim against a loiva. Okay, we'll stop here, and we'll be on Amshach tomorrow, Bez Hashem.
Okay, so Yosy, just before you go, so Erev Parshias, is that one of the Yud Gimel Midas?
No.
Where else do you? No, this is I think the only case.
You're saying that the pasuk in the parsha of Shem Chinam doesn't really belong here.
Yeah, okay. But you need there's rules. I know I'm sounding like Dave. There's rules on how we analyze what belongs and what doesn't. You can't make up a limit in the Torah, right? I don't know if anywhere else. What's that? Okay. All right, to be discussed. This is the only Erev Parshias that I'm aware of, right? We've never used this in any other place.
I definitely am not able to tell you that I'm not capable of telling you anything doesn't exist anywhere in Shas. You have to know Shas pretty well to be able to say this doesn't exist anywhere else. So I don't know.
Well, we know it's not one of the Gimel Midas. That's what I mean.
That's correct. Because there's nothing, even in our Gemara, we're not learning anything from the fact that it's here Parshas. We're learning from the fact that it says Elohim.
No, we're learning the fact there of Parshias.
No, Ir Parshas just
Ir-
means that the Torah in middle of Shem Chinim decided to discuss Hava. That wouldn't be a method to dash in Torah. That's just the Torah's middle of Tangut Shem Chinim. It introduces something that would be relevant to Halva.
Oh,
as
and
well.
well, the term is comparing the two. That's right.
But I don't think this is one that is Shlosh Shemitas.
All right.
Okay,
Okay,
Shkoyach.
sure.
Have an awesome day.
Yeah, see you soon.